just make sure this. All right, Shalom. First and foremost, before I begin this lesson, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Machakudash. Double honors go out to the apostles, elders, of Great Millstone, who rule and teach well. Shalom, well, Barakim to you brothers and sisters out there. All right, this is the brother Malachi from the Great Millstone Nashville camp. And Lord willing, that this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect. All right, it's Monday morning, and usually Mondays, are a big drag and they suck ass. And I usually go into Monday tired, negative-minded. But I've really been trying to stop doing that. Now I try to more so start off my week meditating. It's another week to do better. All right, I definitely made mistakes over the past few days, things that I acknowledge and things that I got to change. And which that's the inspiration for this lesson. Change. Because we understand that we are getting very close to society changing. And we need to make personal changes. Disciplinary changes. We need to become more stoic. There's a lot of things that we have to do before the physical world changes. And we're running out of time. Now, obviously, the Lord, He's going to have you on the level that He wants you at in that day. Excuse me. He's going to have you where He wants you, but still, we gotta push ourselves, right? Because we can't just be in the spirit of, pray for something, or want something done, and then you put forth no effort towards it. You gotta make the change, right? You gotta get up off that couch and make some moves. So let me go. Well, first I'm gonna get that etymology. Let me turn this brightness up a little bit too. Alright. So it says change. It says to alter, make different, change. To substitute one for another, to make something other than what it was. Cause to turn or pass from one state to another, to become different. Yeah. So you got, and the scriptures tell us in, I believe, Ephesians, right? You got to put off that old man. You got to put off them old lusts. And it talks about it in 2nd Esdras, how you have to set aside the weak, which I'll actually, I'll get that. I'm already right here anyways. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 14, verse 14. And it says, let go from the mortal thoughts, cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature, and set aside the thoughts that are most heavy onto thee, and haste thee to flee from these times. For yet greater evils than those. Damn. Oh, fucking eyeballs are bugging out here. For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. Yeah, so it's only, it's only going to get worse. All right, but, and the point was really in 14. Let go from the mortal thoughts. Right? It says, cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature. So we got to become stoics. Right? We got to become more like Yahushai. We got to put on the whole armor of God. Because temptations are gonna always be there. And it's only gonna get worse. Especially with the hour temptation, right? When they make the micro CHIP mandatory for the whole earth to take. Especially here in America, where you're gonna be ousted from society entirely if you don't conform to the image of the beast. And we're letting you know right now that's perfectly fine. That's what you want. You don't want to be a part of this system. This system is doomed for desolation. All right, America. Do you not know that the Bible, which if you don't know, then there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're willing to learn and to understand. All right, because that's one big thing our people don't seem to get. We're not here to tell you, oh, you're just automatically through. We're letting you know that if you don't repent, you're through. If you don't change your ways, you're through. But we're letting you know now is the time for you to make that change and to turn back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. The doors of mercy are still open. The prophets are still teaching. Right? apostles, elders, the apostles, the bishop, elders from Connecticut, elders, brothers, we're all still out here teaching, right? We're all still out here going to camp, doing lessons, edification still going out in all sorts of different categories. And that's not going to stop until the Lord has our tongues cleave to the roof of our mouth. So, like it says in Sirach 5:7, make no tarrying to turn to the Lord. Don't tarry. Don't wait, bro. This is the one thing that you do not want to procrastinate with. You procrastinate in school. You might procrastinate at the job here and there. If your work is a little more lenient when you come in, you might procrastinate with going to work. But you can't procrastinate with the Lord, man. You can't. You can procrastinate with laundry. Don't procrastinate with serving Yahweh by Shemal Shai, with repenting, with praying. Praying for the mercy to be shown upon you. For the Lord to show mercy on you, rather. It's like it says in Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So it's not like, well, I don't really need to do nothing because I'm already doing what I'm supposed to be doing. No, that's not. The Lord ain't dealing with somebody that's thinking like that. All right, do we believe that we're on the right path now that we have, repented? Yes, but we still have to repent every day. We still pray to the Lord every day for mercy, right? That's never going to stop until we get to the kingdom of heaven, when that mercy is fully shown and we receive those new bodies, and we never will be subject unto sin again. Here we're begging to get saved from our enemies and from our own damn selves. Not only our own, not only the other nations. We're trying to get saved from our own people because they're bugged out, and then we're trying to get saved from our own bodies, our own flesh, because that's really our biggest enemy. If it weren't for our flesh, we wouldn't have to deal with our enemies, right? Because we'd be on one accord with the Lord, and we would have never got casted off and been put, in this downtrodden state. You see? But let me go back to this, where I was. So 2 Ezra chapter 9 and verse 1, it says, He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Alright, so that's what we're seeing. We're starting to see judgment really starting to turn up out here, man. We were at class yesterday, and a brother had sent, an article about an alligator attack, in Florida. And it was bad. It was really bad. And we know that was all this stuff is happening. And people, think that we're not violent people. Okay, we're not, all we're doing is teaching the word of the Lord. All we're doing is warning you that if you don't change and get right, the Lord is going to destroy you, man. That's all we're doing. And I'm not, that wasn't a chuckle, well, if you really call it that, but it wasn't a laugh and like, this is funny. It was like like you guys really think it's a game, bro. The Lord is not when in history was the Lord fucking around? That's the thing, because the scriptures tell us that, Sodom and Gomorrah and all these past kingdoms, ancient Egypt, these are a testimony of the Lord's judgment. But yet people don't regard those things. People ain't thinking about ancient Egypt. People ain't thinking about Sodom and Gomorrah. People ain't thinking about what the Lord did to certain enemies of Israel in the Bible either. Like Haman the Agagite and Antiochus, which there was a bunch of them. But I'm talking about the one, I would need to go back into it. The one, I think it was Epiphany. Wasn't there one of them that, his body, the Lord started to cause his body to decay and to rot while he was alive. And he stank so fucking bad he couldn't even handle his own damn, Nobody takes these things into account, right? Everybody. That's why people walk around saying, "Yeah, God bless America," and pray for America. Well, if you really knew the Lord and you knew the Bible, you would know that the Lord is not dealing with America. America is an abomination. All right, this is that great whore that sitteth upon the beast. This is the mystery Babylon here, man. that's going to be destroyed by fire, which is that thermonuclear missiles. I didn't say that. That's the Lord. That's what the scriptures say. I have no control, which of course we wouldn't try to stop it anyways. Why the hell would we? If the place is wicked, it's wicked, and it gotta go. All right, we don't love America. All right, we love the land. Like the land of America is beautiful. All the nature, the animals, things like that. But the people, the Edomites that inhabit America and that have formed it into this abominable creature. This is Rome revived. Yeah, of course we want it, destroyed. All right, but are we going to take matters into our own hands? And no. All we literally do is we teach the Bible. That's it. We teach the Bible. Okay, there's no gimmicks. All right, we're not here for money. We're not. This ain't no teist group. Ain't none of that shit. All right, we're just teaching the words of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. I should have got off the other exit. Shit. Oh well. It is what it is. But let's go ahead and continue on that. Verse 3, it says, "Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world," and they keep talking about that fault, San Andreas fault. They've been talking about that for a long time, but bro, you never know, man. Any fucking week now, that shit could pop off, and that could be an insane fucking mega quake that takes place over there in California. They had a movie about it, San Andreas, right? Now, I don't know if it, but who knows? I mean, we're talking about the Lord. We're talking about judgment, bro. I mean, we don't know. There could be a real bad earthquake that is the worst that we've ever seen in the history of the earthquake that's really going to be worse than that, even though, is of nuclear missiles, because it talks about how the earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard. But I'm talking about compared to like the earthquake in Haiti, that was real bad. But if that fault line, man, and that's the thing, bro, because people, I'll just move to a different state. No, it ain't about moving to a different state. It's about getting right with Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Why does Jake always want to duck and dodge just accountability? That's an Edomite thing, bro. Let Esau always run from accountability. Let him be reckless and wild and fulfill the lust of his flesh. That's what he does. All right, we ought not to be the same as that man, if you dare call him a man. All right, but you just gotta repent, bro. You gotta change. All right, Matthew 4 and 17. Right? Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's all you need to do. Like it says in Amos, the 5th chapter, starting at verse 18. Woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. And then it goes into talking about how, and that's not the people that are in the right mind. It's saying the people like Christians and Muslims and half-ass Israelites that really don't serve the Lord. You're waiting for the Lord to come back. Well, that's going to be your demise, right? Destruction is coming onto you. Woe unto you, because you're not sincerely serving Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Jake find out they're an Israelite from whatever tribe, and they literally still be the same worldly dude, just not walking around and talking about you, Judah. Well, then act like it, right? You got to make that change, bro. We got to go back to the way that we were back in the ancient realm. All right, and it's easier said than done, and it's a process, but a lot of our people don't even want to initiate that process. They don't even want to take the first step, They want to be in the world but serve the Lord at the same. You can't do that. It's literally not possible. You got to serve one or the other. Yahweh Shai said that, right? You can't serve two masters. All right, so that's just something I wanted to put up, and I pray it was edifying. I pray I didn't, do no rambling. Lord willing, everything was within the spirit. But before I close, I want to give all praises to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai B'Shem Rakakodash. No honors go out to the apostles, elders, great millstone. Peace, blessing, salutation to the hopeful elect. Shalom.